Good morning. We are grateful to gather both in person and online this morning as the Unitarian Universalist Society for a time of music, inspirational words, reflection, and connection. I'm Peggy Garrigus, Director of Congregational and Community Engagement, and also your Zoom host for this morning. If you're visiting our service today, welcome. We're glad to have you here. We hope you find the service meaningful. If you're visiting online, I put a link to a visitor form in the chat during the prelude if you want to let us know that you have visited this morning. If you are here in person, I would invite you to either turn off your phone or else both silence it and put it in airplane mode so that it doesn't interfere with either our service or our Wi-Fi network. Thank you. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't all believe the same things, but we affirm and promote 7 principles that guide our actions in the world. At this time, Unitarian Universalists are considering adding an 8th principle, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This morning's service will focus on this 8th principle. And now over to our worship associate for the day, John Bowman, for the call together.
Thank you, Peggy. Good morning. I'm John Bowman, a UUS member and your worship associate today. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. In these times of change, it's so important to come together as a spiritual community to gain sustenance that we each and all need and to help nourish each other. As members of a covenantal faith, we express our core value of love through how we agree to be together and to support each other. It is good to come together and affirm that even when we cannot yet all be together in body, this congregation remains strong and connected. To affirm that we have faith and hope in this congregation, in each other, and in ways we continue to grow together during the challenges of life. And to affirm that wherever any of us is on our life's journey, whether we come to worship with joy in our hearts, weighted with burdens, in need of rest, or searching for people to engage in the struggle with us, we are glad. This community is glad that we are here. Today, Reverend Sunshine J. Wolfe is our guest speaker and will lead us in our exploration and understanding of the 8th principle. Reverend Sunshine is Congregational Field Staff for Central East Region, serving congregations in Western Pennsylvania and across Ohio. Reverend Sunshine hails originally from Indiana, where G learned to sing, dance, and cause trouble, the social justice kind. Reverend Sunshine is a member of Transgender Religious Professional Unitarian Universalists Together and diverse Revolutionary Multicultural Ministries.
Greetings. I share these words for our call to worship from the book Widening the Circle of Concern, report of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change. This is a quote from the Reverend Sophia Betancourt. We are on a journey toward redemption. We have lived a year filled with lamentation, with the strength of generations, the failures of the everyday, and the deep down gritty messiness that is the promise of our salvation. There is inherent goodness that exists between and among us. I want to honor the weary, ragged miracle that is our living tradition.
days. Hallelujah! Oh, fancy style at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days.
Thank you. That hymn is actually a song of resistance. It was sung by enslaved people at a time of slavery in the United States. Now it is time for our chalice lighting. As Unitarian Universalists, we light a flame within a chalice as a symbol of sanctuary and safety, to unite us in our worship and to remind us of our ongoing search for light and truth. Please join me in the saying of our chalice words. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the wonder and mystery of this great gift. So let us now kindle the flame of our liberal religious heritage and renew our covenant of mutual love and care. Love is our doctrine, the quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge, to serve those in need. This we promise, this we covenant, for life and one another. Each week we light a candle for justice and healing. We hold space for our understanding of interdependence, that our liberation is bound up with every other person's liberation. And our feelings of rage and heartbreak over the ongoing pandemics of illness and racism, the devastation of climate chaos, the waves of trauma washing over our world. We light this candle to help us hold space together for processing what is happening in our lives and in our world, to remind ourselves that together we are creating resilience and hope. We light this candle that we may not be numbed or lost to injustice, devastation, illness, and trauma, but rather find strength, courage, and love together to continue engaging with the struggle for liberation, justice, and healing. Today, as we light this candle, we're particularly mindful of the atrocities and civilian deaths that have occurred in Ukraine. After I light this candle, let's hold a time of silence to listen to our hearts and bodies, or perhaps to lift up prayers. As Shung Wei plays our centering music, please take this time to sink more deeply into the presence of each other, joining in the singing if you wish. Or if you're online, please feel free to use the chat to let us know the chalice is lit. So now, Shung Wei and Kay with our music.
Short little one, so we'll run through it 2 times. I return to myself, here where I belong. I am coming home. The bird to its nest, like a river to the ocean.
I want to share a story with you today about a little girl named Amanda. Amanda may feel familiar to you. Amanda grew up with two dads, Papa David and Papi Caesar, and she had many great friends and she went to school. She was in 4th grade and she loved more than anything to help people. She loved to help her friend with her math homework. She loved to help her neighbor with his mowing and his yard work because he was in so much pain that he couldn't do it himself. She loved helping her parents with the work around the house and helping those in need in her neighborhood. So when it came time for her class to do a project to help someone in the community, she was so excited. And Teacher Mike assigned each student a community of people that they should help. Some would help those living with illness, some would clean yards. For those who couldn't do it, each project would be just a little bit different. Teacher Mike told Amanda that he would like her to help the people in Walden, the poor part of town, who are hungry. He said, you can do any type of service project you like, but I want you to help those who are hungry. Amanda couldn't wait. She thought about it all day. She ran home and told Papa David and Papi Caesar about the project, and she shouted out, I want to make sandwiches and take them to the people who are hungry. And so Papa David and Papi Caesar and her neighbor Jim and her friend Sarah made 100 sandwiches for all of the poor people in Walden. And the next day, Papi Caesar drove with Amanda to Walden. She had placed each sandwich in a bag with beautiful artwork on the outside and with a piece of fruit and a bottle of water. And she tried handing out the sandwiches, but no one really seemed interested in them. All of them would say things like, oh, I ate it earlier, but thank you. Papi Caesar couldn't explain to her why no one wanted the sandwiches. She offered them to people who were young, who were old, who were white or brown, friendly or rude, but the answer was always the same. Oh, I ate earlier, but thank you. And as they were walking, she saw a little girl just about her age, and the little girl seemed to be just watching Amanda with a little bit of laughter and curiosity. And so Amanda approached the girl and said, would you like a sandwich? And the little girl kind of tilted her head, looked for a moment and said, aren't you going to ask me my name? And Amanda was a little embarrassed that she didn't think to, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. My name is Amanda. What is your name? My name is Tiny. And this name was clearly appropriate, as the little girl was, in fact, quite tiny. Why are you handing out sandwiches? Well, it is a class project. I was asked to help those who are hungry, and so I got my Papa David and Papi Caesar and my neighbor Jim and friend Sarah, and we made sandwiches to give everyone. And then Tiny did something Amanda didn't like. She laughed. Well, we do get hungry here sometimes, but we never take food from strangers. Some of my neighbors go to the soup kitchen in the evening. And she laughed some more, just puzzling, and said, your teacher really asked you to help people who are hungry? Now I want you to think how you would feel if you were trying to help someone and they started making fun of or laughing at the help you were providing. Amanda was pretty upset. She was upset that Tiny thought this was funny, and really without thinking about it, when you get a little flustered, she shouted out angrily, well, what would you do then? She didn't mean to get so mad, but she didn't like that someone thought her being helpful was funny. Tiny stopped laughing, and she looked at Amanda seriously and said, you really want to help us? Amanda nodded, but she was too angry to speak. Well, we have a garden that the city gave us. They gave us seeds, but most of the seeds were bad or not food that anybody wanted. I mean, who wants 1,000 turnip seeds? Ugh. Who needs that? Amanda laughed. Tiny explained that what they really needed were healthy seeds for foods her community would actually eat, and tools to dig it up, and the land and water the garden. Tiny said that if Amanda really wanted to help, she could get her class and her dads and her friends to write letters to city council asking for a grocery store to be put in the neighborhood because the nearest store was 45 minutes away by bus. Tiny and Amanda talked for a long time, and not just about the needs of Walden. They both liked to jump rope and sing songs and make bird calls. Caw-caw! Papi Caesar spent time chatting with Tiny's mom, and soon the two family were friends. Amanda decided that her project would be to ask her church and her class at school, her family, and all of her friends to come down to Walden and to ask the people what they needed. They helped the community get the tools that they needed, and they had a beautiful harvest meal together at the end of the fall when the garden had grown. It would take a long time, but eventually they would help get a grocery store in Walden. And they had a big festival that time to celebrate their success together. Amanda learned a big lesson that day. She learned that you can't decide what people need help with. You have to ask them what they need you to do and then do that. She also learned that sometimes if you ask a stranger what they need, you might just make a friend.
So now, Kay and Shringway will sing the children to religious education activities. And as Kay said, you may also.
Oh, now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. I love our congregations and our communities. I love that I was able to come into a space that said I did not need to be a Christian to be welcome into community. As a natural humanist, as someone who was raised in Indigenous traditions, specifically Eastern Cherokee, Seminole, and Dakota, I found it really life-giving to know that I didn't have to be baptized, that I didn't have to be like everyone else or think like they did to be in community. And for me, that's the essence of Unitarian Universalism, that we believe in radical inclusion of thoughts, of belief, of values, that we need not think alike to love alike, in the words of Francis W. As Unitarian Universalists, it's radical to think that in a society that so often tells us that there are right ways of thinking and being, and that folks are trying to convince us of that. And to be able to say that not only can you think differently, but you can be in a community of other people who are not like you. It's powerful. And it's what brings so many of us to this amazing community. The Platinum Rule, for me, is one of the most profound examples of that acceptance and the radical nature of that acceptance, because it asks something a little bit more relational and deeper than the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule says, treat others as you would have them treat you. And for any of you who've been in a relationship with a child or a parent or a lover or even friends or family, you know that often what they want is not what you want. And so if you were to treat them the way you wanted to be treated, that wouldn't go over so well. The Platinum Rule asks us to shift a little bit and to say, treat others as they would have you treat them. And it does mean we need to be in relationship to communities and individuals where we ask them that. In our story this morning, Amanda had this idea of what a hungry person in Walden was, but it was nebulous and not rooted in what was real. But when she actually asked someone from Walden what they needed, what they wanted, how they wanted to be treated in that Platinum Rule, then suddenly the conversation changed and she was actually able to affect significant change, not just for the person in that moment, but for an entire community over time, and not by her work alone, but because she worked with many others. But it was a community effort. We live in a world that too often keeps us separated and takes away the power of community to affect change, because it can be so radical. And for some folks, they confuse radical, that thing that permeates all things, as dangerous, when really it's life-giving and transformative. For your people are my people, your people are mine. Your people are my people. Radical inclusion says that we are all worthy of love and community. And there can't be anything more Unitarian Universalist than that. We are part of one planet, one universe, one sacred existence among so much space vast beyond any one person. As a natural humanist, I think it's so important to think of ourselves as the biomes of which we're a part, that we're a small piece of something that is interconnected and interrelated. I cannot live this life without breath. I cannot live this life without water. None of us can. We cannot live this life without plants and animals and other beings and other humans. We are grounded not on conformity, but on difference. I need the air to be independent of me in order to survive from it. I need my partner to not be like me, because to be like me would just be so boring, first off, and also because we challenge and help each other grow and learn. Each of us has different ways of being in the world, and that's miraculous and powerful. We are not built on conformity. We are built on variety, on diversity, and we need that diversity to survive. Our 8th principle asks us to live into this form of universalism, the one that says diversity and inclusion are inherently valuable and worthy of our attention and our work. Our 8th principle, as has been proposed, says this. It says, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. I want to hold on to by our actions and accountably dismantle. In these two phrases, we get the core of what it means to live into that platinum rule, into that radical acceptance. We cannot expect ourselves to be inherently inclusive without being willing to change, to do something new and different. Because what we have been doing for time on has been to support and maintain everything that we've inherited as a society and everything that we have been taught even before we had language. We need to be able to, through our actions, transform how we act, how we behave, how we organize, how we choose to interact with one another. We need to be able to center voices and experiences and ways of being that are not always commensurate with the norm. Because whenever we separate people out based on them doing or being or thinking or believing in different ways, we actually cut off part of the wisdom of our collective imaginings. And to dismantle, as I mentioned, we inherit these behaviors. We create cultures that are based on certain kinds of norms. One of the ones I struggle with is eye contact. I am neurodivergent. I live with CPTSD, and eye contact for me growing up often meant violence. And I'm also Indigenous, Eastern Cherokee and Seminole and Dakota. And for some of my family, eye contact is actually considered rude. But I've so often been told that I'm not communicating in proper ways or being respectful when I don't give eye contact. And yet it's simply not true, but it's based on a norm that our culture has set forth. So when we set these kinds of norms, we don't create space for people to be their authentic selves or to be in relationship with us in deep and meaningful ways. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. You're divine, my divine. And I do want to say, as a natural humanist, as someone who is not theistic, that if divine means for you God, wonderful. If God is not something you believe in, I want you to imagine something divine as something sacred that is worth caring for, like a baby or a kitten or a most valued blanket or a piece of art. That it isn't necessarily about connecting with something outside, but it's about the kind of care and connection that we hold when something is miraculous and beautiful and wonderful. So take that word divine according to your own perspective as you hear me talk about this next piece. I think about this platinum rule and I think about our 8th principle, and it brings to mind for me one of my favorite Jewish philosophers, Emmanuel Levinas. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, unless you really love reading heavy philosophy, I would not pick up a book by Emmanuel Levinas. He's wonderful and it is very thick. Took me about 6 weeks to learn how to read his stuff in a healthy and meaningful way. But there is one section of his work that just continues to create a sense of awe when it comes to this work of transforming community for wholeness. He says that in a moment where, say, I'm listening to you, or I'm trying to understand what you're communicating to me, and I finally understand it not for how I think about things, but for how you think about things. Not that I change how I think, but that I can actually understand how you're thinking in my own brain. That in that moment is where God lives, in that space between us. Now, whether that is God or that is something sacred and powerful, I hold that so true, that those moments where, as was written in Stranger in a Strange Land, we truly grok one another, we truly come to understand one another in a deep way, that there's something powerful in that, because we hold in that moment the diversity and the majestic differences between us that are valuable and whole and holy. Radical inclusion means to recognize that our differences are what's holy, that they're the most meaningful moments possible, and that by lifting those up, we don't diminish. In fact, we as human beings were not built for sameness. We were built to be different. There are certain things that are similar, yes. But accepting that there isn't necessarily one norm, one way to be, it's kind of tricky with our universalism, right? That we're like universally, but if we take as our universality, not that we're all the same or that we all love the same, but that in fact we all have unique and powerful and meaningful ways to love and care, then when we start to hear one another for those differences, a whole lot of change and transformation and ultimately love and grace are possible.
Our meditation prayer today is from the Reverend Joan Javier Duval, who serves as minister of the Unitarian Church in Vermont. You may want to gently close your eyes as you hear these words. Holy mystery, silent presence, uncertain bearer of the weight of it all. In these quiet moments, we listen. We listen for the maybe still breathing, perhaps still whispering, faintest sign of the universal good. We listen between the cacophony of distractions, pulling us toward untruth and falsehood. We listen amidst the shrill cries of desperation, of we've had enough, of when will they stop killing my people, of how much more will the waters rise, of when will it be safe to return to my home, of how much longer can I hang on. We listen and wait through the tumult of these days. We seek assurance. We seek the fulfillment of promise, a promise made to ourselves, a promise made to those who have been stretched to call neighbor, a promise written and enshrined and yet unfulfilled. Help us, abiding mystery, to hang on, to hold on when all is in question, when all is in doubt. Help us to stay firm in our own commitments and our own promises. Lead us back into connection, back into the bonds of humanity that helps us to know each other as beloved. May we continue listening. May we keep watch. May we beckon love and justice and mercy with our own whispers, with our shouts, with our cries, until all know themselves as part of the circle of love. Amen.
From the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. The opposite of racist isn't not racist. It is anti-racist. What's the difference? One endorses either the idea of racial hierarchy as a racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. One either believes problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist, or locates the roots of problems in power and policies as an anti-racist. One either allows racial inequities to persevere as a racist, or confronts racial inequities as an anti-racist. There is no in-between safe space of not racist. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. As Kendi says, to be an anti-racist, we must be willing to travel into difficult territory of addressing systems of power and changing policies and ways that we designate how the world should be. It does not mean that each of us are not capable of prejudice or capable of engaging in racist acts. In fact, it might presume that all of us will at some point engage in some form of oppression behavior, but that those behaviors in and of themselves do not make us racist. What makes us a racist is a complicity in not being willing to change when those behaviors occur, not be willing to be called in or held accountable. When we think of the eighth principle, we want to pay attention to what it means to dismantle something through our actions. And part of that means recognizing that it isn't an either or thing. It is a both and thing. That we can both be anti-racist and strive towards changing the systems that create difference, and we can also be capable of engaging in some of those harms ourselves. Through that, whether that be through internalized oppression or internalized racism if you're a person of color, or through racist actions if you are a white person, through ableism if you are somebody who is temporarily able-bodied, or internalized ableism if you live as disabled. We are all capable of engaging in these behaviors because we are all part of the systems that help make this possible in the first place. So what we are called to do is not to be perfect, not to get it right all of the time, but when someone says, hey, that was harmful, or that isn't the most helpful way to do a thing, or why didn't you include the people you're talking about in the conversation? The response may be to have all kinds of feelings about that, but to say, wow, I hadn't thought about that. What do I need to do now? To actively work towards the change that we dream about. The Platinum Rule reminds us that our experiences, our needs and our desires are all very different, and that that's okay, and that to be able to counter oppression in the world, we need to be willing to recognize that the way that we think and are, and when I say we, I do literally mean everyone, can cause harm, and that part of our ongoing work is to recognize that doesn't make us bad folks. We are all inherently given value and worth and dignity, but that we are still responsible for those actions, and that we need to be willing to change and transform to allow them to be possible. I want to read our 8th principle one more time. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. For your people are my people, your people are mine. Just as in the story with Tiny and Amanda, part of recognizing who our people are is recognizing who gets to be an expert in their own life and story, who gets to be centered for our efforts. The 8th principle has been created through the loving wisdom of people like Paula Cole Jones and Bruce Pollock Johnson, through the wisdom and sharing of people of color, people living with disabilities, transgender, gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, queer folks, by folks from differing languages and histories and cultures and backgrounds and countries, who have all said, I love what Unitarian Universalism says it is, but I don't often experience that when I go to church. And if we believe that story, if we choose to let the folks who have told us through being experts in their own life, that they want us as a religion to take this on, then my friends, for me, that's enough, because we're called to love one another, not in our sameness, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And because through all of the trial and the struggle and the working through it, we create wonder and possibility. It'll be painful at times, yes. It's not easy. Some of our congregations who have been on this journey for decades find that they don't just arrive at being a multicultural beloved community one day, that it goes through cycles of things that are really powerful and energetic, and then they stumble and mess things up and have to figure them out again and again and again. And then they kind of go through another iteration and then go through it again. It's a journey. And if you think about the people from historically marginalized communities who have literally been on this journey, not just for their own lifetimes, but for generations and generations, then you can let go of the idea that you're going to solve it in your lifetime. You're not. But through your work and what you gift to the next generation, what we build together as communities and communities and communities, we create something holy, something beloved, something divine. You're divine, my divine. You're divine, not my divine. Not because my divine and your divine are the same, but because I hold as holy that which you consider to be divine. And I hope you hold as holy that which I consider to be divine. And that as we talk about those things that are meaningful and powerful and sacred, that are painful and difficult, when we're called into accountability, that all of these things allow us to hold one another's divinity, one another's love, one another's wisdom and thoughtfulness, one another's being as worthy and whole and part of something greater than ourselves. Your divine, my divine. I want to lift up the author of this hymn. Shoshana Jedwab is a Jewish singer and created this song, and it has been much beloved in our community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and our trans communities, in many different communities. And so as we sing this together, I'm going to invite you, and hopefully a slide will pop up soon, to sing this song with me. And I'll just sing it a couple of times through, and that will conclude our sermon for today. But I do hope that as you consider what the eighth principle means for your congregation, that you don't look at just the experiences and wisdom of the people who are there now, but the people you imagine could be a part of your community if they felt like they could be included. Who's not there yet? And how can they be there? And how will it be such a miraculous gift when they are? We are whole and wholly beloved. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine.
How we give, what we do with our lives, our time, and our resources is a reflection of our values. In response to the abundance we are blessed with, every week this congregation donates generously to organizations in the community whose work aligns with our values and principles. Our community partner agency this month is the Domestic Violence Intervention Program. DVIP provides comprehensive support and advocacy services to victims and survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, and human trafficking, focusing on immediate and long-term safety, empowerment, dignity, and hope. In collaboration with the community, they strive to end domestic abuse through education, accountability, and social justice. DVIP services include a 24-hour hotline, in-person advocacy, criminal justice and economic support, an emergency women and youth shelter with kennel services, and more. On the screen, you will see instructions on how to give online, or you may take this time to write a check and address an envelope to UUS to be put in the mail. If you're attending this service, Here in the sanctuary, you can give online, or there's a basket for checks in the atrium, or someone will help show you where that is. You may assist our community partner, contribute to the congregation to provide additional support for our operating expenses, or contribute toward your pledge to our society. The offering is a sign of commitment to this free congregation, which is completely supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. As we give and receive the offering, may we be transformed by our giving, and may the world be transformed by our gifts. Nurturing gratitude and how we understand and express interdependence is part of how we live into our Unitarian Universalist faith. May what has been shared here today help us more fully affirm our interconnection and live into love and justice. Immediately after the service, we will have time for all to join in conversation and community online. And Reverend Sunshine Wolfe will join us via Zoom for a conversation in the conference room after the service. So we invite those in person to go to the conference room and those on Zoom to stay in the main room. And now to close our service today, we will sing hymn number 1020, Wayaya, an African expression meaning, according to its composer, we are going.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know this, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will
Please join me in the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame
Hot for truth, community, for the fire
of commitment. All these we carry in our hearts
hearts and in our minds.
minds until we are together again.
As we enter into our time of benediction and closing, I offer my gratitude to you for letting me be with you in this way, in this community, as you take on this most important work and ask difficult questions, maybe find some difficult answers, and also find some empowering questions and empowering answers. So as you go forth on this day, may you feel holy and whole and blessed. May you do the good work of hearing and witnessing to experiences outside of your own, and to engaging in that radical acceptance that is such a deep part of our faith that says we need not think alike and we need not love alike in order to be in community. We need to be authentic and accountable and in deep relationship with one another. So may you go forth in this day, committing to helping heal our world through your actions as a community, knowing that you are not in this alone. Blessed be, and may we always say, as often as we can, yes to one another. Go in peace. Blessed be.
Along with this benedictions, as we will be doing this ring, we'll carry this light in our soul.